All right, so I got my watercolor set all set up here. In the Crayola 16 pack, there is a nice yellowy orange that is a good base color for the lighter parts of the pumpkin, but you never want to use the colors straight out the set. So I'm mixing in just a little, it's a little too yellow for me. I'm gonna mix a little bit of orange in with it and just test that out. And actually that doesn't look too bad. So, all right. So I'm really going to concentrate on the lighter part of the pumpkin over in here where I see those lighter pieces kind of coming through. Watercolors is all about the layers. You don't want to use too much water. You just want to kind of layer this in, and it's okay. I can go over this ridge here. Once I go over the ridges though, with the pencil, it locks it in. So just be aware, like if it was too dark, you should have probably erased it out or cleaned it up a little ahead of time. I'm going to sort of put this all in this area. I'm putting a little bit more orange in it. I'm not crazy about how yellow it is, but we will see some of that. And I am just going over the ridges right now. Later we're going to define those a little bit better, but for right now, to get the lightest color in there, it's okay to kind of go over those a little bit because you're gonna, those are darker anyway. Just be careful with your edges. Make sure you're using your paintbrush correctly and like using the edge so you get a nice clean edge there, that you're not like going into it and going over your line. Also try to paint in just one direction. You just saw me mopping it a bit there. That's a bad thing to do because you're kind of rushing it a little bit. So slow down, make sure you're pulling your paintbrush in one direction and not like going back and forth. You don't want to use it like a mop. I am seeing there's like a yellow, that bright color is right up the side of this section of the pumpkin. So I'm just gonna extend that a little bit further than I had. While I'm letting that dry a little bit, I can start mixing some of my stem colors, and the stem is, the lightest color in that stem is sort of like a beigey color. So I'm going to use a little bit of yellow. I've got a little like orange mixed into my thing. I'm going to use a little bit of brown and try to get those like real light. It's not too bad. It might be too brown. I'm going to throw some more yellow in there and some more water. And even I'm going to grab a little bit of that blue on the edge, just to tone it down a little bit. That's not bad. So I'm gonna paint, I could actually paint most of the stem this color because I'm gonna go in later and put the darks in, but see all those like nice light straw colored stripes and stuff in there. Just go ahead and lock those in. We're gonna put more texture and stuff on this later. Like I said, watercolor is all about the layers. There we go. All right, so that's not a bad first coat. Like you could stop there if you didn't have a lot of time and then come back to it later because it's kind of a decent stopping point. But I'm gonna go ahead and continue on. So I'm gonna start getting darker with my oranges. I'm gonna use the straight up orange out of here. I'm gonna mix it with a little bit of that yellowy orange, and I'm gonna use less water. And I'm gonna start to go in where I see like those darker oranges. I probably should have tested that out first, but I think that looks pretty good. And I don't want to go too far into where I had the lighter color. If I wanted to blend a little bit more, I can use a little water on the edge there and blend it in a little bit. This side of the pumpkin, this left side is going to be like really pretty dark, so I don't have to go too crazy with the orange. I'm gonna put darker colors in there. There is another orange highlight on the edge of this ridge right here, so I'm just gonna throw that in right now. So see, I'm kind of going around that lighter area. Later, if you want, I mean, if you want to get the, like, there's like a texture to the pumpkin, almost like an orange peel. One of the things you can do with that is just like water down your brush and maybe like texturize it a little bit if you'd like. Those little brush strokes there to kind of give it so it doesn't look so smooth. You could do that with the second orange we just mixed, that like slightly darker value. But you want to leave plenty of that lighter value coming up in there. Oh, it doesn't look too bad. I'm constantly having to add more paint to my little tray here. And then maybe down in here I'll like texturize that too. Kind of like, it's probably best if you almost paint like one section at a time so it doesn't get too swamped. I feel like kids feel like they gotta paint the whole pumpkin all at once, and then they get too much paint and water going on and it gets like all swampy looking. You don't want to do that. I'm gonna start putting that ridge in there with the secondary color I've got here. Be more solid down in here. Just watch your edges. You don't want to overshoot your pumpkin and end up with all that mess. I mean, you can put the shadow under there later. So I'm still just mixing that yellowy orange and the regular orange together. I haven't really added anything else to it, and I'm going to get to that a little bit. Probably should switch to a round brush so I can get in the edges a little bit better. All right, so just be careful of the shape of your pumpkin. Don't overshoot your edges here. Got too much water. Sometimes the round brushes pick up a little too much water. Like, you don't really want to see it like all drippy like that. So, you know, dry off your paper towel. Just pick up a little less paint. You can even grab a little bit of that, or you can do what we call lifting and just suck that back up. Try it again with a little bit less water. There's some light highlights right across the top of that pumpkin, so I'm going to hit that with the brighter colors in here. That kind of just come down in. All right, and that's my second coat of paint, and you see it's much darker. I'll worry about the stem later. I'm gonna just continue with the pumpkin for right now. So at this point, I'm gonna add more of the straight up orange, less of the yellow. And it does start to get a little bit of reddish in there, and I have this nice like red orange over here. So I'm gonna start maybe throwing a little bit of that in. Try to get those more intense colors, and I am gonna put maybe a touch of brown in there. All right, that doesn't look too bad for some of our more intense colors. So I'm gonna start layering that in there. Hopefully this is dry enough. And honestly, some of the seams in the pumpkin are actually this darker color, and I don't want it to go too dark. I just watered it down a little bit. I'm just gonna come down those seams, and we're gonna darken up some of that so it doesn't look so liney. I think when we get it all in there, it'll make sense. Okay. So I'm just gonna water that down just a little bit more, especially over here on the right side where it's like really light. I'm gonna water down that color and just try to like lay that in nice and light. We don't want this to look too dark. We want it to kind of blend in a little bit. That might be blending in too much, but maybe not. It's all right. Right. Just gonna come down this line too that we had in there. I mean, each line's gonna be its own value. There's not like one right or wrong color for it. So your paintbrush stroke should follow your pencil lines on this. And then you can kind of almost like stipple it in on the edges because the pumpkin does have like a little bit of a texture. Maybe water it down and stipple it in both. Like if that looked too liney, you can just kind of mess it up and make it a little bit more natural. I feel like that's got to be darker on this side. That stipple in a little bit. Just keep looking up at your pumpkin photo or the pumpkin that's in front of you so that you're matching the colors as you go. If you're just looking at your paper the whole time, it's not going to look like what you want it to look like. All right, I'm going to start darkening up these guys over here. This edge, I don't love how straight it is. I'm just going to use a little water and I'm just going to like almost like mess that up a little bit, give it the texture of the pumpkin there. Right. At this point, I think it's time for the browns to come in a little bit more. So I'm going to use a little bit more of that reddish orange. I'm going to start adding in some of the brown. You could also always use blue to darken up your oranges. That will tone it down too. Sometimes that can make it a little green because of the yellow in it, but you can use some of that too. See how the blue just helped tone that down a little bit so it doesn't look too brown. I might want a little red in there too. That looks pretty good. And you can always test out your color. It's not bad. I see this ridge right here is particularly dark, so I'm going to go in and kind of hit that first. I may have to get more than that layer of paint on there. Right, and then I can water this down just a little bit and add that brown into this section of the pumpkin. It's like darker over here. I'm gonna go ahead and start darkening up this left side of the pumpkin. I'm holding my paintbrush pretty close to the metal ferrule so I have like good control over it. I think that's important when you're trying to paint inside the lines and you're not doing a sketch anymore. You're just trying to fine tune the shapes and stuff. You want to have good hand control. There's a really dark shadow I just noticed behind that stem. I'm going to just start darkening that up now. I just threw some straight brown in there because I got it too late before. And I do want to add like the edgy shape of the pumpkin in there. I'm okay with hitting this because I'm going to do the stem later anyway. Just going to darken some of that. All right. Come in with the brown and get some of those more dramatic shadows on this back side and coming out of that stem. And if they feel a little too liney to you, you can always take a little water and just mess up the edge a little bit. Just don't get too much water like I just did. Right, you can kind of blend it in with a little bit of water there. There is some more of that brown kind of coming in around the top end of this, so I am going to blend this in just a little bit more than I have it. I just grabbed some clean water. I'm just gonna blend that edge a little bit. Just blending things that are sticking out too much, that look a little too hard-edged. All right, so this area over here still needs a lot of work. I'm gonna mix in some brown. I'm gonna throw some red in it and some of the orange, both. Try to get like a real dark color. You can, it's not coming out dark enough, you can obviously use a little black, darken it up a little bit if it's giving you trouble, and start, yeah, there you go. I could have tested it on my test paper, I suppose, but I'm seeing as I'm doing it that that looks too brown to me, so I am gonna go over that with a more neutral gray color too, or warm gray, I guess. But it's all about the layers. You gotta build them up with the watercolors. They don't just come out the right color to begin with. Okay. I'm gonna let that dry a little bit, because if I try to hit it right now with the darker tones, I feel like it's gonna just bleed in. Just fixing some of this up in here. All right, I'll go back to the stem for a minute. I'm gonna start getting some of the greens up in there. They're really like dark. There's gonna be black, touch of the green. I had some like of the brown and orange and stuff still on my brush. That doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna start putting some of those tones in there too. I'm just using the tip of my round brush to kind of get some of the texture. I'm gonna leave some of that nice straw color showing through. I'm gonna marry that edge. We don't want to leave like any white there. It's gonna be dark actually anyway. I guess there's a shadow there. All right, so I'm gonna use some more green, some more black. I guess I'm using the yellowy green. I am using the yellowy green on the secondary side of the palette. And black, and that's actually, that looks pretty good. Some of these stray pencil lines, since they're on the outside, I can either catch them with the paint and just go make sure I like hit them so I don't have to erase them, or if I leave them, I'm gonna have to go back and try to erase the edges of that later, which can be tricky. So it's better if you just kind of, especially with your darker colors, like your stem colors, just catch it, like just go over it. There's some real dark shadows on this, right in here. So as long as this is dry enough, I can kind of go in and start to get that little shadow down in there. Right, that's also gonna help define my pumpkin edge here. You don't want to outline anything. It's really important not to outline anything. And if you do outline it, you have to pretend like you didn't and like just fade it in, blend it in. So while I've got that dark color, I'm gonna start to darken up this stem, because this is dry enough. For whatever reason, the stem dried faster than the pumpkin did. That's gonna need some work yet, but I want to go back to the pumpkin here. I'm gonna start putting in, I think, just red and black and see what happens. Mix it right into the orange I had on there. That doesn't look too bad. Yeah. Now if you get it too wet, what you'll find with the cheaper watercolors and the cheaper paper like what we're using, is it'll start to pick up the paint back off the paper, and you don't want that. So I'm laying it down real gentle so it doesn't like scrub the paint back off the existing paper. That's looking like a nice color. Yeah, I used mostly black and red, and I just mixed it into whatever I had in there before. I feel like with watercolors, a lot of times kids get the, there's a fly. They just get it too light and they call it done, and they haven't really like gone in and gotten the depth of color that they should. Yeah. Ew. There's like a little bug. All right, let's go back to the stem. I'm gonna throw some straight up black in that color I had before, a little bit of green, and let's see if we can get this dark enough. Paint with the direction that you want things to go to. This stem is going up and it's twisting around, so all my brush strokes are going that way. I would never go left to right on this. And it's really liney, so I'm using my round brush and I'm just going in and I'm using the tip of it. For the table, I'm just gonna mix, it's sort of got a purpley gray color going on down there, so I'm gonna throw in some of this purple. I've got still black on my brush. And with this, honestly, I'm not gonna, like, it doesn't have to be too exciting. One of the things you might wanna do is wet this part of your paper first. So we do like a wet on wet technique where we're just, we want it to kind of blend out on the edges. And if I go in right now with the dry paper, it'll be really hard edge. So I'm gonna like wet this a little bit first with just plain water. And then I'm gonna hit it with my shadow color. And you'll see what will happen with the edges is they'll kind of do a nice fade out thing. And you can help it along a little bit. I just used black. I used a little bit of purple in there. A lot of times the shadow is the like complementary color of the object. So since this thing is orange, right, it's gonna have like a blue or a purpley kind of tint to the shadow. It just tends to do that. So you can help it along with your brush a little bit and some water and just like fuzz out those edges. Just let it be kind of natural looking. I guess I can go all the way up to there. It's gonna be darker towards the object, so you can even go back in and just be like, all right, here I'm gonna just like make this a little bit more defined. Kind of, and then you can catch any edges that you might have messed up on the bottom anyway. And then just let it like blend out. You can kind of force blend it a little. And then that's about it. It's pretty much done. So, sign it, you know, get a little brush. Don't try to sign it with a big brush. Use a color that's already in your pumpkin. I'm just using like the brown or whatever, and just, you know, nice and easy. I probably should have started with the C. And that's it.